Hello my sightseeing peeps! This is Kat, aka Kakibot, and I make videos about Edinburgh and Scotland. And on this channel there is one video that has been sorely missing, and that is one about Edinburgh Castle. And there is a good reason for it. Because on my own personal Edinburgh life journey, there's always been this kind of a black spot of me never having actually been to Edinburgh Castle. Yeah. Shame. Now don't get me wrong, I have spent a lot of time all around the castle and under it, and I want to say over it, but I am not a drone pilot just yet. Yeah, but you know, the Edinburgh Castle has this beautiful ground around it and under it, and there's so much to see there, so you know, I always kind of felt like this is enough, this is enough to kind of be in the shadow of this colossal beauty, and I was quite happy with that. Well, today I finally bit the bullet, and for myself and for you, I bought that £18 ticket and I went in, and I had a horrible time. But before you get all angry at me in the comment section, it was mostly my fault, and I thought it would be an interesting angle for this video to tell you what to avoid and how to plan to have a much better time than what I had yesterday. First, we're gonna start by actually going to the castle, or you know, looking at the footage I took at the castle yesterday, and just having a little look what is there to see and what you're actually getting for that £18 ticket. Okay, let's go. Edinburgh Castle is accessible from 3 directions: from Grassmarket, from the Royal Mile, and from around the galleries on Princes Street. As you can probably imagine, being one of the highest spots in all of Edinburgh, neither of these access routes are super easy to climb, but I'd say the Royal Mile route is probably the gentlest. You can get your tickets online or on the spot. Online you have the advantage of seeing how many tickets are still available for your time slot, although as they kind of overlap, it's not necessarily a super helpful piece of information. The ticket is currently £18 for adults and £11 for children, and then you will probably want to spend extra couple of pounds on the audio guidebook or even a physical guidebook. If you choose to pick up your tickets at the castle, there's this little kiosk that you're gonna visit and just scan your QR code and you'll be ready to go. But I don't really think there's much point in that, because you can just get the tickets on your phone and they will still just scan your QR code, and yeah, that's you in. Before you show anyone your ticket, you can enjoy the Esplanade, which has one of the nicest views in town, and also an ice cream truck. You could actually still get into this first portion of the castle without having to buy a ticket, as the tickets would be sold here beyond the main gate. Nowadays that is not the case anymore, and a bit of a bummer if you ask me. Further on, you will find a whole set of cannons and the famous 1 o'clock gun. You'll see people starting to queue here to see it being fired from about 12:40, but there are also other viewpoints around the castle to watch it from, which I would recommend over just being a part of the crowd right next to the gun. I've heard that the gun is actually quite loud as well, so you know, maybe if you have sensitive hearing, you don't want to be right next to it. My next stop was the Western Panorama viewing platform. One of my favorite bits, actually. I don't think you can get a really good view of this part of town from anywhere else that I could currently think of. Around it is the building which hosts Scotland's National War Museum. I actually wasn't aware that this was a part of the castle, and admission is included in your ticket, so, you know, like, technically it says it's free, but I'm not sure if you could, like, walk into the castle and just say, like, ooh, I just want to see the War Museum. I don't think that's a possibility. The handsome man on the horse in front of the museum is Earl Haig, an Edinburgh-born First World War senior officer. You will find yourself in a little courtyard with 3 main areas to visit. 2 of them, unfortunately, don't allow photography. That's the Crown Jewel Room and the Scottish War Memorial. They are still super interesting to visit, obviously, so, you know, you can have a little surprise without me spoiling it. The 3rd spot is the Great Hall. It's a charming ceremonial hall from the 16th century that was later used for military purposes as well, as barracks, I believe. And the last area you will likely visit is the Forward and Half Moon Battery. Definitely some great views to be had here again. Before you leave, don't forget to peek into the tiny St. Margaret's Chapel, and don't miss out on seeing the Edinburgh Castle Dog Cemetery. So yeah, that was a little video tour of the castle. Surprisingly, to me, you can actually take footage in most of the places that you're gonna be able to visit with your ticket. That's great, you know, a great opportunity to take pictures. But yeah, I still did not have the greatest of times, and we are now gonna be talking about how to avoid that in your experience. So, first of all, I think that it is very important to realize that this is one of the highest points in Edinburgh, and it's mostly outdoors. So if you can imagine what the weather is like in Scotland, you should logically prepare the same way as like if you were going to the Salisbury Crags. You should be having some good boots on, something windproof, protect your ears if you have sensitive ears like me, you know, earmuffs or a hat, you know, or if it's sunny, sunglasses. You're gonna be outside a lot, and it's kind of a stressful place. I'm gonna talk about that later. But yeah, definitely prepare yourself like if you are going on a little hike, and that's gonna help your experience. So now to my second point, it is quite crowded, and even on a day that I was expecting to be quite empty, which was a Thursday morning, during what I don't really consider to be like a top tourist season here in Edinburgh, so, you know, start of April. Yeah, there was a lot of people, plenty of people, and a lot of it is families, and obviously, you know, it's a nice place to go with a family, with kids, but if you're not quite used to crowds, if you don't enjoy crowds, sometimes kids make crowd wars. It's, although, you know, they give you breathing space, but they don't really like register you as a human, so they like run into you. Anyway, there is a lot of crowdage, both indoors and outdoors, and, you know, like right now, none of us are really used to being in crowds, and if you feel like, you know, vulnerable person when it comes to, you know, catching diseases, maybe you might want to consider that. So even though there are definitely precautions in place to, you know, make sure that everyone's safe, it did not feel safe. Like, people will be standing like this close to you in like a tiny room. And when you're wearing a mask, some of the spaces that you can explore indoors are very dark. So that's another thing to keep in mind, because I know that some people see in the dark worse than others. Some people do not have night vision. I am one of them, and also when I wear a mask, my glasses get all foggy, and then when it's like totally dark around me, I feel quite vulnerable when it comes to like falling off stairs and things like that. So usually when it comes to accessibility, people will think of things like stairs and like inclines, but in this case I would also consider that there are a lot of spaces that are tiny and dark, and you know, people have preferences based on their, you know, health state, who might want to decide not to visit those parts of the castle. My third tip, this one is very specifically bound to what made my visit a bit poopy, is the castle, especially the outdoor parts, extremely photogenic. Like, there are some beautiful angles that you will just not get from anywhere else. And I did forget my SD card, of course. I did have 2 other cameras on me, so I was able to take some, you know, photos with my phone and then the footage with my vlogging camera. But I brought so many fancy lenses, and like, it was so heavy, and it was like such a bad weather day, and I was like carrying all of this weight, and I couldn't use any of the stuff that I brought along. So, you know, really double check if you have everything before you go, because obviously coming back will cost you another almost 20 quid. So yeah, I know that this is kind of a tip that applies to like everything that you do when you travel, but if you're wondering if you should bring a good camera or like a long lens with you to the castle, definitely do. There are so many great angles, and you know, kind of like half bird's eye view angles, which is always really special to have. That's one of those angles that often you want to pay for. Yeah, like there's even that like nice kind of elevated angle at like West End, which I don't think is very easy to shoot from anywhere else. So yeah, don't be like me. Be smart, be prepared, double check if you have your battery, your SD card, your lenses, your adapters, all of that. Next tip. If you're gonna be going for one of the audio guides, which I do recommend, because I think it's a really practical way of kind of having like a self-guided tour, do opt in for the castle's own device, because what I did is when I was buying my ticket, it kind of went like, okay, so like, if you bought your ticket and if you download your audio guide, then you don't have to like talk to anyone else, you just like walk in and that's you. And that's, to me, is always like a great selling point, not talking to any people, not having to wait anywhere for anything, great. But unfortunately, the castle's audio guide app, like in browser that you're using as you're walking around, is not very good. For some reason, they have decided to like list the bullet points or like the chapters not like chronologically, but like by numbers, but not like how a human would count numbers. Just to tell you what I mean by that, it goes like 1, 10, 11, 12, and then you have to scroll through all of the teens and hundreds. There's also hundreds, so then you get to number 2. So it's a lot of faff, and if you're already trying to take pictures or videos with your phone, that basically, you know, is gonna interfere with a smooth experience, which is already made really hard by this UX from hell. So I believe that if you borrow the castle's own device, this is probably not gonna be an issue. I would guess that the device is programmed in a much better way. So yeah, that's my very pro tip. And last but not least, please give yourself enough time. I had maybe like 1.5 to 2 hours, and it was technically my work day, so I did know that I have to go back and start working again. So again, looking back at that, bad decision, but I really wanted to go on a day that wasn't like a long weekend day. So yeah, that's what I did. And once I got into the castle and I started realizing how many things there are to see and like how many things really deserve your time and attention, I started feeling very kind of guilty and panicked that I will not have enough time to see everything. Not having my SD card kind of saved me some time, because I think that if I had my camera around, I would probably want to spend even more time at the castle. But so I would recommend, I mean, 2 hours at least. I think that 2 hours are gonna be pretty solid. That way you can, like, you know, you're gonna have enough time to really kind of go through everything. I think that if you're a history nerd, then maybe 2.5, maybe even 3. I think that if you plan around like having a whole morning there, I do not believe that they will at some point be like, ooh, everyone who came at this point has to leave now. I think that they're expecting people to be there for 2 to 3 hours, because again, there's a lot there to see. Everything is very informative. You have the audio guide, but you also have a lot of stuff to read, even though the crowds sometimes make it hard to like really stop and read things. And also like pandemic anxiety makes it hard to stop and read things when like you get like 3 families like closing in on you and like everyone's coughing and you're like, children. Yeah, maybe the pro tip to enjoy going to the castle is just don't be me. I'm realizing. Yeah, so give yourself enough time. There's also like little picnic tables up there, and I think that if you're coming with a family or with a group of friends, it's good to have that extra time to maybe, you know, like sit down, have your egg and cress sandwich, and yeah, enjoy that as a chill time, and not as a, oh no, like I have to go back to work right now and I've just started reading about Earl Haig and I need to find out who he is. Okay, so I think that gets me to the final point of really telling you if I think that this is worth it. So there's like 2 sides to the coin of my opinion. One of them is that for the money that you're paying for it, it is worth it. Like there's a lot going on, and you know, whatever you're into, like if you're just into kind of like looking at pretty things and enjoying medieval architecture and learning a bit about like how certain parts of the castle were used, then, you know, you're gonna have a great time. If you're into modern history or like modern war history, military history, then you will also find yourself a lot to learn from. Yeah, and also like if you just want to take a lot of photographs and have great views, then the castle delivers on that front as well. But I think that I still left with this sense of, you know, like if this is your first visit to Edinburgh and you have, let's say, 2.5 days to spend here, I'm sorry, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I genuinely think that there are better places to go in Edinburgh if you have a short amount of time to spend, and maybe you don't have like all the money in the world. Because I think that if you're short on time, then a visit to the castle to really enjoy it will take a couple of hours. And you know, like if you're not on like unlimited budget and you don't want to just be like, sure, like here's 20 quid, I'm gonna go in and out. I don't know, like the whole old town is just filled to the brim with these great like hidden nooks and crannies which are not just covered in people, where you can take beautiful pictures, and like it's easy to just like go on the internet and learn about what this thing was used for. And obviously a lot of these places, like Greyfriars Kirkyard, right, like that has a lot of information for tourists. It's free, it's a beautiful place, there's a sense of serenity about it. I think, you know, like you probably by this point can sense that I'm a certain type of person who does not like crowds and like loud noises and having to pay too much for things. So if you feel like you're the same type of person as me, then, you know, this is a tip for you. Like there is a lot more to discover beyond the castle. I think it's super fun to just like walk around the city. You can walk around the city at night, you know, it's a safe city to explore at night as well. And yeah, like it's free and there's so much of it. So to me, the castle really feels like more of an sort of advanced Edinburgh fan thing. So yeah, I would say kudos to Edinburgh Castle for not making the tickets more expensive over the past 10 years. Because when I first moved here, fun fact, I think back then it might have been £16, but I think it probably was still £18. Back then those £18 were like 80% of my food budget for the week, and that just wasn't something I was willing to do. It wasn't a priority for me because, again, Edinburgh is filled with beautiful places where you can go for free and learn about history without having to pay 70-80% of your food budget. Now that we're at the end, I think that this is the obvious point where I'm gonna ask you what you think, because again, I think that my opinion on the Edinburgh Castle might be, you know, divisive. So let me know in the comments below if you think that someone who's visiting Edinburgh for the first time ever and they have like the weekend to really learn what Edinburgh is about, if they should actually visit the inside of Edinburgh Castle. And if you've been to Edinburgh Castle, also let me know what's your favorite bit. That takes me to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. I hope you've learned from my mistakes, and you can always see me and more of my mistakes on my Instagram, on Kakibot and Kakiblog. Now that's out of the way, you can also visit my Etsy store. You can actually buy an enamel pin with Edinburgh Castle in it. Yay! Win-win. Okay, now I'm truly done, and I shall see you soon. Bye-bye, my castle friends!